Namaskar. Welcome to Baat Pachisi. On Baat Pachisi, we are talking about a film. The film is Haider, and it is supposed to be based on, it is of course based on Shakespeare's famous play Hamlet. So, we see Hamlet turn into Haider. And where the story unfolds, definitely in Kashmir. These are the films made after 1990. And the period is where the insurgency and the violence related to it is growing by leaps and bounds, and many people are missing. So, in this story, the film, the play turned into a film. Haider, from Hamlet to Haider, is done by a Bashrat Peer. And who is Bashrat Peer? Bashrat Peer is from Kashmir, and he is pro-separatist, pro-Pakistani journalist, come writer, come commentator, or whatever he may be called. He was also educated in Delhi. Later on, he went to USA, and there he is called on television to talk about the Kashmir, its insurgency, and the missing people, and the role of the Indian Army and the Indian states, and so on and so forth. And he does that, the Haider kind of description of the event on the American television and other television. And why he does it? Because he knows that only, and he does it with a straight face. He says as if he is sharing the ultimate truth, but the ultimate truth is far from it, because his narrative, which he weaved in turning Hamlet into Haider, is on the same basis. He says the part of the story which he has woven in the film Haider is based on his novel Curfew Night. So, see, there were curfew in Kashmir and in Srinagar and wherever he lived. So, his angst is there against the curfew. And who has imposed the curfew? The India has imposed the curfew. And who is the agency who is monitoring and doing this service? This is the Indian Army. So, the villain here is Indian Army. That, is the basic narrative of this film Haider, which can be termed as the tragic enactment of a classical play. And the criminality of turning into a classical play into a subversion and terrorism promoting and supporting film lies on basically on the shoulders of three very able, very creative people, a musician turned filmmaker, Vishal Bhardwaj, and then he has made quite a good films, of course, that we have to accept. And this Bashrat Peer, a Kashmiri, turned Kashmiri separatist supporting journalist from Kashmir, and UTV, one of the very prominent production house in India. So, these three have turned into a classical play, into a tragic enactment, to peddle a story, a narrative which is totally false. So, what they do it, how they do it, why they do it, it's simple. Because all the films which were made in this period of 20-30 years till the Kashmir files came up and shaken up the whole industry and so many others, powerful places, people from government to social organizations to political parties and the media as well. All these films, whether this is Haider or the Mission Kashmir or Rosa or any other, they all kind of promoted terrorism And then all of the film had some kind of a parallel line going that India is a occupying phase, that is a particular jihadi and communist narrative which is so prevalent and common in certain circles in India and certain universities and so called intellectuals and all so on and so forth. So how they do it, how they turn a classical play into a tragic, enactment to peddle their ideology. But that means they believe that India is an occupying force, which is what is the narrative? This narrative, it comes from ISI of Pakistan. This is the narrative of the separatist people who have been groomed and made famous and funded by the people across the border, and also the intelligence agency and so many others and the government agencies for a and so-called noble purpose that they are the people. They will act as a middleman and they will keep the terrorist away. They will, they are reasonable people. So the people who has confessed on television of killing innocent people, from Yasin Malik on Bitta Karate, they were invited to Indian television channel like some kind of a peacemaking heroes, a new political people, youngsters, who will change the politics. That kind of a criminality was committed across these people are committed, they have accepted they have killed people, and there are so many witnesses. Of course, there was no cases filed because the law and order machinery had totally, completely crumbled down, because there was a connivance between who was ruling Kashmir, like Farooq Abdullah and his family and others also. And the Kashmir was kind of gifted to the Abdullah family by Delhi for whatever, the brotherly relationships and the liking for each other, and at the same time a particular hatred for prince or the rajas by late Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. He hated Maharaja Hari Singh for whatever reason. Maharajas were arrogant. They were going through a very, very nasty and difficult phase, so he didn't like. So there are so many other elements, but the basic, coming back to Haider, which is based on Shakespeare play Hamlet. There is a doctor, and he is performing operation on a terrorist. Akhlaq. So doctor's name is Halal Mir. He is in Srinagar and he is operating upon a very known, very famous leader of separatist militant group, Akhlaq. And this news goes to the Indian army, and definitely they have to react in a certain way. But at the same time, when this is happening at the home, his wife Ghazala objects to this operation being performed, and he also questions his allegiance to terrorism or to whatever. So soon doctor is accused of harboring terrorist, and there was a shootout, and the terrorist leader Akhlaq is killed, and Dr. Hilal is taken away for the question. And now the doctor's house is bombed to kill any other militants they have been supposed to be hiding. These kind of things have happened where terrorists have taken over a house. So that is the they have woven a certain fact, but to turn the story on its total head. The basic purpose in most of the scenes and the basic narrative story is one thing, characters and their conflict is another thing, but the narrative which is woven around these stories and character is very simple, clear, which is Pakistani narrative created by ISI and on the separatists and so many others people, so-called liberals, and they believe that the Kashmir, the separatists are true, and they are raising up slogans, and they have taken up arms. They agree with that, and there are so many people who later on went to jail for supporting, creating this kind of a narrative. So now, the son of Ghazala, Haider, he comes from Aligarh Muslim University. So for those who may not be aware, Aligarh Muslim University has a unique contribution to creation of Pakistan, because its students and its prominent teachers and the student leaders took part in the agitation and the creation of Pakistan. So and that university still remains in India. That is the biggest paradox, and they are having this portrait of Mr. Jinnah, which they don't want to take down for whatever reason. So the Haider, the son of Ghazala and Hilal, he comes from his university looking for his father, and his friend is army officer's daughter, who is also a journalist. So they together try to look around, and he goes to the police stations, and he behaves like a tramp, and then there are so many conditions which creative, imaginative writers, directors, and actors can enact very well. But the thing is, the cover, the narrative is same. So this is one of the biggest tragedy. This is a criminality which has been indulged by all these parties, and there were objections about the film's narrative, what they were proposing in the film, but most of the film of that era was closely resembling to each other and basically supporting and the terrorism and the separatism of Kashmir from India. But that was the intellectual force which is created by so many Indian intellectuals, and definitely they have their friends in Western press, and they have been hearing stories. So Mr. Bashrat Peer, he appears on television telling this Haider narrative to again and again to the Western audience, and so these people they flourish. If you support some kind of trouble there, you support militancy, you support killing of the people, you support Islamic fundamentalism, and of course there are so many people to help you in the Western countries. That's a different situation. But one more criminality which is far more significant and has been pointed out, that the Martand Sun Temple, which is more than 1100 years old, which has a special and a very unique status and linkages with the civilizational situations and the history in the Kashmir, that has been turned into a den of a devil, evil's den, evil's cave. And there is a Mr. Vishal Bhardwaj, the creative director. He went forth in the interviews, and also the actor and their team. They discussed Shakespeare and the play and its conflict and angst between the characters and this and that. But when he comes, the Haider comes back, he watches that his mother is having an affair with the younger brother of his father. So it creates some kind of dissonance in his thinking, and he's disturbed. Of course, somebody would be. So all these things, but where they converge on a same thing. India is villain. India is occupying force. Indian army is the villain. That is basic thing. And one more thing which I just pointed out, the depiction of Martand Sun Temple, the ruins, it has been destroyed, it has been destroyed completely. And they portrayed it, Mr. Vishal Bhardwaj, hey, no, trouble. We never thought again to using and naming the Sun Martand Sun Temple as the den of the evil. I mean, what kind of a criminality is this? What kind of debasement is this? And when people, rightfully, so many Kashmiri people and historians who know, what is the importance and what kind of a criminality has been created, they objected to it. So, the leftist, the liberal, leftists are never liberal, but they are called from some strange terminology. They say that these are the fringe Hindu, groups. They don't know anything, they don't know history, they don't know geography, they know nothing. So, these are some fringe groups who are objecting. There is nothing like that. So, can they do it with some other monument of other, religion? Can they do it? I don't want to name any monument because that's not right. But what Mr. Vishal Bhardwaj has done is a debasement, a big possible mistake he is not even aware of. He won't even agree because he never has. And what was the budget of the film and what kind of business has it done? It doesn't matter. As far as, the film is trash primarily because it tells a wrong and falsehood. It creates a falsehood narrative, which is so prevalent and accepted in certain sectors in India, and as well as wherever they have their friends in abroad, in America and Europe and all that. But that's the tragedy that one of the big, very nice, a classical play has been debased. It has been destroyed, and its enactment is so sordid and questionable to turn into a terrorism promoted maybe. So we discussed film Haider and a tragic enactment of a classical play by Shakespeare. So we hope you like this small description or discussion about the play and the film and its background and its storyline, its narrative. Narrative is more important than the stories and the characters. They are very clever people in Hindi film industry in the Bombay, and we should not forget that the Hindi film industry for decades or maybe more than 50 years, they were funded, they were supposed to have been funded by terrorists sitting abroad, smugglers and gun runners and drug traffickers. So they can, this is the narrative they like. These are the films they like. These are the stories they like, terrorists and the smugglers, they make heroes out of them. There are so many examples. So we discussed film Haider based on Shakespeare's classical play and what they did to it. Hope you like the discussion. Please share the link with your friends and relatives. Subscribe to the channel. Soon we will meet again with another topic to discuss. Thank you. Namaskar.